I work for Eickemeyer Veterinary Equipment. It is a company established back in 1961. It's an independent, family-owned business that provides a whole range of veterinary equipment for the veterinary profession. This system, the Equinosis Q with lameness location software, you might have heard about it before. It's actually not a brand new technology. It's reasonably new here in the UK, but it's actually been developed in the States back in 2007. At that time, it was known as the lameness locator. They've now decided to rebrand it and call it the Equinosis Q, because to be honest, it's not actually going to locate the lameness. You will still have to do your diagnostic blocks as a vet to actually really localize it. But it does tell you what limbs is lame and help you decide which limb to start blocking if you have a multiple limb lameness. I started working with this a few years ago, and now I only specialize in doing this for Eickemeyer Veterinary Equipment. And there's about 20 system out in the UK. There's more than 300 worldwide. So this is not a new technology. It's based on decades of studies. So we had this talk earlier by Thilo Fau, and he's actually gone through all the basic principles behind the system. So I won't go too much into details about the biomechanics. It's late in the day anyway. But why should we actually do objective lameness evaluation? Because you're already doing the subjective lameness evaluation. The vet is performing the exam. Why should we add the objectivity? Because if we can measure something, why not do it? When I look at a horse, I'm an equine vet, that's my background. When I look at a horse, I assume, okay, as I say, okay, it looks like it's right hind lame, but it might also be lame on the right front. I might not see it. It might be bilateral hind limb lame. It might just be so supple I can't see it. But it's still very important because it might actually tell me that when I start work up the right hind, I might come up with more issues than I didn't see in the beginning. Also, I might pass a horse through an exam and say, this horse is perfectly fine to go on the track and start exercising after having a treatment performed. And then it's not actually ready. This system measures 200 times per second. These neutral sensor systems are so sensitive they can sample 20 times faster than our eyes. So they will pick up these much smaller asymmetries than we can see. So we're no longer guessing if a treatment has worked, if the horse is ready to go back on the track and go back in training. Now we can actually see it, we can monitor it, we can also control exercise them in the beginning. So the basics about this is 3 sensors. So the one Thilo showed you earlier today had more sensors. We only work with 3 sensors. We have an accelerometer on the head and an accelerometer on the pelvis. They measure the up and down movement of the head and pelvis. So the only thing we look at is the vertical movement of the torso. So we don't look at the hip rotation. We don't look at the stride length, the toe drag. The anatomy and the conformation of the horse can affect these parameters, but the vertical movement of the torso is the most reliable parameter of measuring lameness. The basic thing we're measuring is asymmetry. We're measuring if there's any difference between the right side of the horse and the left side of the horse. Because in each stride, we've got 2 up and down movements of the head and pelvis. One for the right side of the horse, one for the left. And then we see if there's any difference. And that's basically what we're measuring on. Then, of course, we have the thresholds. And Thilo already mentioned this earlier, that for the head it's 60 millimeters, and for the back, for the pelvis, it's 3 millimeters. We actually have an additional threshold because we do allow a little bit more head movement. So the overall threshold is 8.5 millimeters. Because otherwise you would find too many horses lame. That's not actually lame. So as I said, the Q is already used worldwide. This is actually an old map, this few years old, but it just shows that this is widely used all over, and it can be used by any type of practices. So this is not only universities and bigger practices, it's also to free-man ambulatory practices. It can really be adapted to any clinical work, and you can use it on any surface and any yard, but you can also use it for research. So it covers the whole range. And we've really positive feedback from the Q&A users. So this is one of the UK vets. He's been using the system for more than a year. And I know he uses it on a lot of racehorses. That's the main thing he works with. And he doesn't use it on every single case. He will pick out the cases and say, these ones we need to monitor, and we need to see if we can increase the performance. So you can do all the basic trials. So you can do a straight line, you can do lunging, you can do a written evaluation. And you can do diagnostic blocks and your rechecks. So it gives you a quantification of your blocks and your rechecks. So it will give you a percentage of improvement, which is really good when you're Friday afternoon, you just want to go home, and it tells you it's not improved, and you have to continue blocking. And it's really annoying. You might want to not use the system. But it's really good to take out the human element of wanting blocks to work. We are expecting blocks to work. We perform them. We choose a block because we actually do expect it to work. And this system will tell us if it's not, because all horses are different. And even though you can find certain patterns in certain types of breeds, some race horses will have typical injuries, you will come across the one that's just going to be different. So this is an example of the reports the system generates. So it will actually, the only thing it's measuring is this up and down movement of the head and pelvis. So it's a difference in the maximum position of the head and a difference in the minimum position of the head. So it gives you a ray plot for the front limbs and a subplot for each hind limb. Each ray we see, each blue ray here is a stride. The red ray is a total amount of asymmetry, so a mean of all the strides, basically. And then here you can see all the strides on the hind limbs going upwards, all the red ray, meaning that the horse pushes off less on that limb. The pelvis rises less on the right hind and the dunce, on the left hind. But it also has a lot of green strides. That means that the pelvis falls less. So this horse also has what we call an impact lameness. So it simply doesn't hit the ground as hard. The pain is occurring when it hits the ground as well. So this is a quite significant lameness on the right hind. And the system will say how much evidence of lameness there is. And that's based on the numerical data it also gives to you. So this one is very handy for the clients. They can understand the graphs. That's really easy to see. But you, as a vet or as a trainer, will be more interested in the numbers it gives you, because it tells you how much asymmetry and how severe this lameness is and how significant it is. And then it also tells you how consistent it is, because a horse with a back pain, lumbosacral pain, neurological cases, they often tend to show an intermittent lameness and not a consistent lameness as this. This is for sure a limb lameness you can work up. And then it's just go ahead and start blocking. So this horse also shows the right front lameness, so all these points towards the same quadrant. So very significant right front. But this is all caused by this right hind lameness. And the system actually knows about these relations. So it looks about how long are these strides compared to these, and then it will indicate which limb is the primary. If this right hind lameness would have been less significant, so it would have been much milder, the system would have indicated it was a multiple limb lameness. It also automatically selects the strides. So when you stand there and you have your tablet that collects the data wirelessly from your inertial sensors on the horse, you don't have to look at the tablet. You press the start button and the horse trots off and it goes on the lunge. You can focus completely on the horse, and then you can press stop and this report is generated automatically. So here it actually shows these that are highlighted in light blue, those are the strides that it's actually measuring on. So when you trot the horse, you will see that a lot of the strides will be taken away in the beginning and the end of a trot up, because the handler interferes with the head movement. And also when the horse is turning, when it's walking, we are not measuring. We only measure in the trot, because we got the greatest excursions of the torso in the trot. So there's multiple uses of the cue, and we can adapt it to each type of breed, each type of use of horse. So for the race horses, this will be a way of managing them. You wouldn't use it on every single horse, but you would pick out your cases and you will work them up, maybe with nerve blocks if the vet is there. As a trainer, it will be interesting to follow a horse and monitor the progress after treatment.